Yeah.
Hello, Melbourne. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, we advise that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Krupas?
Here.
Mr. Romano?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
Here.
Mayor Miggins? Thank you.
Before we move on to our business meeting, I would like to offer a moment of silence for longtime resident, volunteer, and township committee member, Mary McNett, who passed away. Mary resided in Melbourne Township since 1970. She faithfully served in many volunteer capacities, including as member of the Melbourne Township Committee from 1994 through 2005. We offer our thoughts and prayers to her family and friends. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the November 21st, 2023 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those partially absent. May I have a motion to approve November 21st, 2023 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're going to get on reports. Please provide reports. Maybe we can start from Ms. Purpose.
Sure. Last Thursday night, we had the public information session on the two-way traffic circulation on Essex Street, the concept review plan. There was quite a number of people in the room and on Zoom. I think a lot of really great questions were raised, and the subcommittee is going to meet on Thursday to review some of the issues that were brought up and some of the questions, and go back to the drawing table to try to figure out how to answer them and resolve some of the issues that were brought up. And then, it'll come back to the public again. So just in a continuation conversation of that.
So we're going to incorporate whatever was decided wherever possible and come back with and will there be another public session?
I think
We want to do it that
there'll
way.
need to be another public session.
And if they want to see the detail on the two-way traffic, it's on Essex Street only for now. And they can see the details on the website. Could you tell where it is, Alex?
Yeah, on the website, it's under business, under the downtown vision plan, and two-way subcommittee. All the documents, previous documents, as well as the current documents from that November 30th public information session are there.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Rupus.
I don't have any reports
Cohen?
tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Ms.
Yes.
Romano?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also want to offer my condolences to Mary McNett's family. I knew Mary for a long time. She truly cared about our community. She was a member of the Historical Society as well as a longtime member on the Township Committee. And I just want everybody to keep her family in your thoughts, especially during the holiday season. Okay, I want to thank the Milburn Public Schools PTO Conference for including our food pantry clients in this year's annual Thanksgiving food drive. They provided all the fixings for a Thanksgiving meal for about, I think we had 7 households this year. Also, a thank you to those that reached out to me and donated turkeys. We were able to give some of those away. I want to also send a special thanks to those that took part in our stocking the pantry last week during Giving Tuesday. The pantry is just about fully stocked, but we can use some more items. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook under Milburn Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Explore Milburn Short Hills. I hope you were able to visit the winter villages this past Saturday. Unfortunately, Sunday was rained out. We had about 500 attendees, s'mores, holiday music, fire pits, and decorated igloos. Please come by next weekend from 5 to 9. It'll be up at the Short Hills train station. Explore also has an advisory committee made up of businesses and property owners as well as interested residents. They meet 4 times a year. They help to discuss business advocacy, event planning, and other marketing ideas. They work hard and provide additional hands-on before events. So if anybody's interested and wants to become a part of this advisory board, you can reach out to Steve Grillo at steve@exploremilburnshorthills.org. And that's
Thank you, Ms. Romano. Mr. McDonald, do you have any reports?
I do. I have a few reports. Just wanted to let the public know that we had a recent discussion with PSC&G. There's continues to be a lot of work in town, in particular, the 3 sections that are being impacted by these infrastructure improvements currently are the Glenwood section, the Washington School area, as well as the Beechcroft area. So just in terms of estimated completion time for those projects, the Glenwood section, thankfully, and will be completed by the end of this week, December 8th. The Washington section is slated for mid-January, and the Beechcroft section is slated for the end of January. Again, this is all weather dependent. We are having a conversation with them about making sure that the roadways are clear for the holiday season at the end of this month. And we are starting our discussions on restoration, which will not take place until spring due to the cold weather and the necessity for warmer weather in paving. Just want to let the public know that understanding the disruptions with the Morris Essex line that are currently going on, Boxcar Transportation has contacted us that they are going to run buses from the Short Hills train station as well as the Milburn train station. We just posted that on Facebook, and the schedules are there. It is a service that residents would pay for, but it would be, potentially a more adequate commute right now, as this disruption takes place and that service is worked on.
Did they tell you the cost?
I believe they called it the South Mountain Special, and it is $19.99 one way. I have some information here. There are pickups. I think there's 6 pickups. 6 pickups in the morning from both Short Hills and Milburn. They also have a schedule on this post for coming back from the city, and pickup locations as well as the price, which looks to be $19.99 each way, but it says riders save 33% on all tickets with a membership. So again, just another option for residents.
And where do they drop you off in the city?
There are, it looks to be American Eagle, Lexington and 58th, 610 Lexington between 52nd and 53rd, 480 Lexington between 46th and 47th, Grand Central, Grace Building in Bryant Park, Dallas Barbecue. Additionally, I wanted to let the public know that the Milburn Police Department and the sign shop will be installing pedestrian activated signage next week with our vendor. I had previously reported on those locations, and I'm not going to attempt to recall all of them, but certainly one of them is right by the high school at Short Hills Circle. Another one is on Upper Milburn Avenue. And there are 3 other locations that those will go in.
Parsonage and Long Hill.
Parsonage and Long Hill is another, yep. Also some speed indicator signs will start to go out as well, although those will not be all at once as the pedestrian activated signs will be. But those will be spread out throughout the township, and one of the key locations that's going to go is on Old Short Hills Road coming southbound toward Hillside. As many recall, there was a crash there with a school bus, although, you know, there were other factors involved in that, but I think that's a good location for that. So more of those will be coming out. That's all I have.
And on the Glenwood side, or not Glenwood side, the school that we have, Rector Street is included in that school paving process? Next to ShopRite?
You mean the Washington School? Yeah,
Washington School.
that whole area is obviously been torn up with the gas utility improvements.
Okay.
So we're working with PSE&G to figure out how we can maximize the paving. As many may recall, in some of the sections of town, PSE&G is required or obligated to pave the section of the roadway that they disturbed through trenching or patching, and usually that is curb to center line. What we're trying to do is make sure that, given our 2024 schedule, as well as the roads that have been impacted, to maximize that we can get curb to curb paving in more areas than what usually happens.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Marizzi?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a brief report. Many of you attended the case management conference on November 27th before Judge Santamoro, where she asked me to report on the status of the redevelopment agreement with RPM. I did tell her that we were still finalizing the terms of that agreement. She was expressing her impatience and reminding us that tomorrow is the deadline for the adoption pursuant to her order. I did mention that the Township Committee had asked Mr. Cantor to request an extension of time. She said she would consider that, but she indicated it would be a heavy lift to get more time. And that's my report.
And we have that on our new business to discuss the
Yes.
redevelopment agreement.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Marizzi. And thank you all. Other than attending the meeting on the two-way traffic, I also am a part of flood mitigation team. Flood mitigation team is one of the very passionate team I have seen in all the different committees I have worked on or volunteered for. This time, we actually met with the town of Greenbrook, who has gone through major flood mitigation processes and projects. They had federal government involved, New Jersey DEP involved. So we got their inputs on how they went about it, and they have been doing that for last, I guess, 20 years or even more. So their process have been going over for different projects. So it all starts with the idea phase and went on to a big projects. And part of those projects have been started and finished. So it has helped them quite a bit, and it was a really good insight towards that. So far in flood mitigation, we have applied for home elevation program. That there were 3 parts to getting the application approved. I guess we have gotten approval on the first part, and now it is on the second part,
I'm sorry.
the home elevation program
Correct,
application.
They're still waiting for any comments back from FEMA on the application, but the first part has been approved.
Approved. So if that gets approved, then hopefully next year we get those home elevated, and that is something which is at a home level. So even if there's water that comes around in your backyard, it won't go into your living space because the home will be elevated, complete home will be elevated. And 75% of the cost is covered by the FEMA, and 25% is cost covered by the homeowners. And what we had done also in the past is we have met with Township of Cranford, who went through this process and went over. The first time around was 75-25. The second time around, I think it was 90-10. So we are hoping that after this round goes about, and if people see difference, in their flooding of the houses or around the houses. I think this is very close to whoever gets flooded, they can actually apply for this through Township and can get the home elevated to at a certain level where people feel safe while we work on the bigger projects. We have also worked on the piping projects in South Mountain areas. 2 piping projects are done. It cost us about $700,000, and the 3rd piping project is on the way for next year. It's at least in slot for getting done for next year. That doesn't take away flooding or completely. It actually, when the water comes to your backyard, it takes the water out immediately. So water is not stuck in your backyard for a good number of hours or a day or two. In a couple of hours or few hours, the piping has become bigger underneath their backyard. So that water that gets collected gets out of that house quicker than what it was before. Third, and the big project that we have been working on is the bypass project. It's an expensive project where all the Mayor's Rawe River project that actually got together and have been talking about this forever, for a very long time. We had actually gone in and said to them, since our town will get the most benefit of this project, we are going to do the heavy lifting on that, and we want that to be approved. So Milburn is kind of taking a frontier role to get that done. For that, we needed to check the depth of the water reservoir in Orange, and we got that approval. Did we get that done, or is that planned for sometime soon, right?
Yes, it's in process. We're just working with the city of Orange.
City of Orange we're working with. So once we know the depth of the water, we would know exactly, can the project happen in that depth, or do we need some other projects to be done if the depth is not that deep and water can be taken out. That is, when I say bypass, the water get collected there, and when it gets to flood, the water spill over and come all the way downstream to us. And the goal for us is to make sure that the water comes out of that water reservoir before it starts flooding. So there is some time for relief. So a day prior or 2 days prior, we let that water pass. And so when the water comes in the reservoir, it actually sticks there, it doesn't spill over. It gives us more time to react. So that is a bigger project, and that's what flood mitigation team is working tirelessly on, figuring out what other way we can use getting information from other towns like Cranford or Greenbrook is the main example. We saw big walls in Greenwood. I've made some rounds. I take that route over the weekend. So I've seen that wall. We are going to also go with the team probably next year, early next year, to see the projects they have done to understand it better. Thank you. Any comments or questions on this report? All right, we'll get into public comment. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come into the lectern. Clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, saying our meetings are recorded and are readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there's a remote option. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. If you're attending by computer or electronic device, please click raise hand button and be sure your video is on when you comment. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there is 30 seconds remaining. A reminder that this is not a time for dialogue or to debate a matter, and this is a time during our business meeting for the public to offer comments. After the conclusion of the public comment period, and if they wish to, professional and committee members may respond to comments made by the public. Members of the public are welcome to contact the township or township committee at any time outside of our business meetings for requests for information or with questions. A reminder that we are all neighbors and personal attacks are strongly discouraged. I will now open the public comment period. We can go through the room first. and then go online.
Go first, get the party started. Good evening, my name is Jeffrey Feld. I live in the Poets section of Short Hills. I do take your invitation. I do send questions prior to the meeting to Township Committee. And I've been doing this for almost 2 or 3 years and they never get answered. So therefore I had to come up here tonight and ask certain questions regarding our very short consent agenda item. One, I think is we should be addressing is the bill list. Why the delay in posting the bill list till sometime this morning where it could have should have been up on Friday. As to the bill list, I always come back to the entries regarding our municipal attorney. And I go back to the question is how much have we been paying them for the declaratory judgment action, pre-August 1st, 2021, and since 2021, August 1st, 2029, first, because that ties into what happened last week at the case management conference, the redevelopment agreement, and really the harsh treatment that the township really received by Judge Santamoro. In addition, when you look at the bill list, there's entries regarding Maplewood. I think we have some maybe joint inspections, but when you had to look very carefully as to the index suffix of the numbers, it tells you where the monies are coming from. Some of the bills, even though they have a requisition dated this year, are being paid from monies from last year's budget, if you look at it. And I think we should have an explanation. The reason I say this, because when I appeared here first time in September 2020, I talked about where I discovered about $1.2 million unpaid bill in Orange. Now, there's sometimes when you have the budget, I don't know, I haven't gone there, whether the audit picked out those obligations were incurred last year, whether they appeared in our audit. I don't know that. There's also, it seems that there's a senior hot list that's going to be coming out in January and February. Now that I'm officially a senior citizen, how do I get on that list? Regarding tax appeals, this is a continuing question I have, that the street address is not listed on that resolution, nor is the recipient of them. However, if you go on to, let's say, a municipal land use board and you're making an application and it's published in a newspaper, the name of the applicant is posted, the block and lot is posted, and is the street address, and I don't understand the difference. Finally, about the closed executive session minutes, when you have a giant chart, there's a difference between, this is a continuing thing, between when you adopt it. Why does it take so long to adopt the minutes? Then there's a question when they're released. Who is the fox guard in the hen house when they get disclosed? Because one of the issues we might want to know is who is sitting in the executive session meetings, what professionals are being part of those discussions. I know my time is limiting. Hanukkah is coming up on Thursday. A good holiday gift. Make a contribution for $5. You get a good book. It's a good stocking stuffer, and the monies go to the food pantry. I gave Graham one. I gave Ben one for the holidays. It's a great $5 gift. But Hanukkah is a festival, but it shows what a small band of people who rebel to protect their liberties can defeat an evil empire. It's like Star Wars. And this community has witnessed this in the last 3 years, where a rebellion was formed. And I think a 1,700 vote differential shows you what we can do when we unite together.
Thank you, Mr. Feld. Is there anyone in the room who wants to talk?
Good evening, Phil Kirsch, I'm a Milburn resident. I have really 3 small questions. First of all, as far as prohibited uses, does the town have anything that would prohibit a gun shop from opening in Milburn? Have they done that, or can they do that? Secondly, do we have anything that would encourage solar panels being put on new construction, especially new construction like the Annie says or Wells Fargo? Is that something that we can do as a township, or has that been done? And lastly, I've seen that most affordable housing is 15% in developments going up. And I'm wondering, is there a way that we can ask for or legislate more than 15%? Is that something we have done, or can we do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirschner.
Good evening, everybody.
Mayor.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Mayor.
There.
Diane Thal-Eglow, former mayor, lifelong South Mountain resident. I'm here to comment on the paper mill's ask for over $7 million towards their $40 million renovation. I am a supporter of the paper mill. In fact, we are going to see Fiddler on the Roof tomorrow night. When I was mayor, I was instrumental in bringing to the director of the paper mill attention that the Milburn Bike Shop was going to be available before it went public. I encouraged them to act fast, knowing they wanted to have an art school and were out of space. Milburn Township owns the paper mill, and yet we do not have a township committee member who sits on or even attends their board meetings, never mind a vote. I wanted to attend a board meeting as mayor, and I was not allowed access. For the record, Mr. Hobie's salary as producing artistic director is over $350,000. Mr. Stote's executive director's salary is over $326,000. From what I saw, that's 2 to 3 times the salary of other people in that position in New York and New Jersey. At the meeting last week, if I heard correctly, the paper mill has also asked to stop paying rent. That rent goes to escrow for them. It's like asking your adult kids to pay rent, which you are secretly saving for them when they eventually move out. I believe we need to take care of, they hopefully move out. I believe we need to take care of our own house before we help our kids. The stage and the seats at the paper mill were recently renovated, were 100% paid from just 2 families' private donations. I understand the need to upgrade and renovate and beautify the paper mill. However, our town hall, police, and fire departments must come first. Our residents depend on and use these public services daily. We cannot live without them. Yet our own public employees are working in conditions the public would be shocked to see. I'm wondering if Mr. Stotes has seen the bathroom down the hall, the plastic on the windows in this building, and the frayed carpet, not to mention the pews we all suffer sitting on. I could go on because I know the technical and logistical deficiencies in our township's buildings. I always advocated for the TC to consider a town hall, police, and fire complex, as many of our neighboring towns have done. You could still do police and fire, because I understand this building hopefully will be renovated. Again, we have the highest incomes in all of New Jersey, and yet we let our public buildings fall into disrepair. Last week's meeting was a nail biter. I didn't know if it would be approved to purchase the building on Willow. Mr. Cohn, thank you for your remarks. I think it's an important first step in understanding that we can renovate town hall. We can have a place for our seniors. We can do smart things with planning. This town has no debt. It's time to spend money at our houses first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Charles Bambara, Milburn resident for 27 years. First matter, this is the last township committee meeting that I will be able to attend with this sitting committee, so I wanted to personally thank Deputy Mayor Viniak in person, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get a chance to thank Mayor Miggins as well, but thank you for your service. We have differences of opinion from time to time, but I do respect you and appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
Secondly, on flood mitigation, I've taken a personal interest and looked at some things. I heard what you said. The 2 real focuses for a solution is upstream retention and downstream flow. Simple as that. Those 2 things. You address those, the town will not flood. When I walk the creek bed, I see trees, boulders. I don't see the same depth or cross-sectional area in the creek bed for flow. It expands and contracts. And I looked at historical maps of the town, and the location of the Lakeside Village Garden Apartments used to be a pond the same size as Taylor Pond. The topography underneath where they filled still thinks there's a pond there. All right, it doesn't know we filled it in. So, certain areas are gonna be prone to flooding. I think that really we need to look at the big picture. I'm sure you've done part of that, if not all of that, but if you haven't walked the creek bed, you should, because it's an eye opener. Lastly, regarding, I saw that in the response from the 9 Main Street between the fair share housing letter and the letter from the developer's attorney. But I suggest an ordinance in this town. I know we voted on 9 Main Street, or you voted on 9 Main Street to excavate. That was the correct decision because it removes the pollution permanently. I think we really need an ordinance in this town that says if there's a polluted site, you must excavate. And you may not cap, because capping puts a Band-Aid on it, and that's just passing it off to another generation. So I think an ordinance would go a long way toward, we have gas stations that are coming out of service, and the ground beneath them is on Woodland, the Shell station. On the corner of Vauxhall and Milburn, there was an Exxon station there. I don't know what the status of that parcel of land is, but I think requiring excavation is the right thing to do, and an ordinance would force that. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Debbie Frank, Milburn resident. Just a quick question, and I apologize because I've missed a few committee meetings, so I don't know whether you addressed this, but I wasn't certain what the status was with police dispatch. Since I know that the agreement with New Providence and Summit is coming to an end, I did not know where we stood on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Jean Pasternak, resident. I just wanted to say thank you both, Annette and Deputy Mayor, for your kind words for Mary McNett. I just want to add a couple things. We happen to be very close the last few years, and I think one thing I really got from her, and I hope I said this at the last meeting, but I'm going to say it again, is there was an era that she was a part of for a long time where people really did work together. It didn't matter what party, it didn't matter whatever, it just, they worked together. And I saw her doing it. I saw her talking to Joe Steinberg. I saw her, interacting with you, Annette. And it really did leave a strong mark. So I really hope that we're resetting and that we can go back to that time and really make our town our priority and not let things get in the way when we have differences. So the other thing I'd like to say is that there are no formal plans yet about her service. So when that becomes known, we'd like to share it and make sure the community is aware, because she knew a lot of people and many people respected her time and her service for our community. So, and the only other thing I wanted to add was, I like what everybody said here tonight. I think there were a lot of good comments, but I really do think it makes sense. I think it was you, Michael, last meeting, and Tara as well, that there'd be a plan, about how we're investing in our community. It not just be piecemeal. Somebody comes, they need something, but we really think it through long term. And we have some really good minds just right here in this room tonight. So hopefully we can get people together and really make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Is there anyone in the room that wants to talk before we go on? All right, seeing none, we'll go online. Good evening, Ms. Ursu.
Good evening. Happy holidays to everybody. I'm starting on Thursday. I would just like to add that a beautifully said tributes and condolences on behalf of Mary McNett and her family. She was truly a Milburnite. Prior to consideration of the 24 SID budget, has this current body received an analysis of the 33 letters which were presented in support of the budget? Just a few examples. Were the letters from property owners or merchants? Were all property owners and merchants solicited by Explore? It appears only a select few, considering that there was only 33 responses. Have the letters been categorized by districts? Were any of the letters in support from the Board of Trustees? Have any response letters from recipients of hosting, recipients of any hosting stipends or any specific other type of benefits? Also, I'd like to add, why haven't the amended SID bylaws been presented on the agenda for the TC's consideration to date? When will the town provide an accounting for the Bear property litigation, specifically since April 2021, when Judge Moore encouraged and suggested to mediate and not litigate the statutory dispute? And based on the latest NewJersey.com post regarding the Kai litigation, fair share housing, would this board find it advantageous to create a public pleading library? It would restore the trust and confidence in local government. Thank you again and have a nice holiday.
Thank you, Ms. Ursula. Good evening, Mrs. Stone.
Hi, I'm just trying to start the video. Okay, great.
There you are.
There I am. Thank you. I want to also acknowledge Mary McNett's passing. She was not only a friend, but a political mentor for me, and I miss her. I will miss her terribly. She was a tremendous asset to the community, and even though she did not serve formally on the Township Committee anymore, I always felt that her presence was always felt on that dais. I shared a lot of wonderful times with her, and it's a tremendous loss for the community, and I look forward to honoring her memory. May her memory be for a blessing. I want to talk about, I want to compliment Diane's Eglo. She did a great job presenting her case for the renovations of the town hall and the police and DPW. I am a longtime fan of the paper mill, and I would love to see that part integrated into the community. The paper mill is a tremendous asset to the community that adds business value to the restaurants in town and people who go shopping before. I know many customers come into the shop prior to going to the paper mill or after a show. It brings tremendous amount of business, and definitely should be seriously considered what we can do for them and how to integrate the ask that they asked for into the community. I also want to comment on the gun topic that was brought up about an ordinance prohibiting a gun shop, and I would like to also add a vaping shop. I'm really very much opposed to this. I understand there's a vaping shop considering coming into the community, and I would adamantly oppose that. And I know that it was brought to my attention that the hemp shop is also carrying vaping products. This is a national epidemic, like the opioid crisis in our country with young teenagers. And everybody knows that I was very much against the marijuana, the CBD dispensaries in town. And it just brings an element to the town that I don't think is favorable. And I would like serious consideration for that. I know the hemp store probably opened because they thought that the marijuana ordinance would be approved, and it didn't, so they took in vaping. It's really not good for the community, for the kids. And I understand cigarettes, but it's just a bad thing, a bad image for the community. And I really would love to see something done to prevent a store of that caliber opening. Thank you very much for your time. And Sanjeev, good luck to you. Thank you for your service, and Maggie as well. I'll probably see Maggie at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. Is there anyone else online who'd like to talk or make a public comment? Seeing none, I close the public session. Public comment period. Mr. McDonald, would you like to answer some of the questions or any of the questions?
Yes, I would like to address Mr. Feld's comment regarding Maplewood. He is correct. We have a shared service with Maplewood to provide both electrical and plumbing inspectors. We enter into an agreement with Maplewood, and as you may or may not know, Maplewood has been through some transition over the last few years. These bills that are on today's bill list is one from the fourth quarter of 2021 and all of last year, because we had not been billed. But those monies are kept with those previous year budgets. It's not until after 2 years that funds lapse into operations or fund balance.
So you kept it accruing.
Correct. Well, yeah, it's there to pay outstanding bills if necessary, like is this case. We are currently in conversations with Maplewood to make sure that this is rectified, and we continue the good relationship that we've had with this shared service, which has been very successful. To answer Mr. Kirsch's questions with regards to prohibition of uses, and sort of in the same vein as Mrs. Stone's question, you know, the township zoning ordinance are pretty vague in the sense that it's usually retail sales or retail services that are permitted uses. That is not to say that, again, the township committee couldn't consider other types of uses, and certainly be in consultation with the township's planner to make sure that what would be done is legal and permitted. There is nothing that I am aware of that requires solar panels. Usually that is something that is put forth to the developer. The township does have an ordinance that requires itself to be LEED Silver certified, which could also encourage the use of solar panels. And most of our affordable units that are projects that are going in are 20% set asides. I think there's one that's just under 20%, like 19.5. And the township set aside ordinance that requires any apartment units over 5 to provide a set aside is set at 20%.
And that was made before is 15%.
Correct.
Before we pass on the ordinance.
That's correct.
Everything else is 20% going forward.
That is all I have. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's Ramona. Yeah, so the dispatch center is going to continue to live where it is in New Providence. The lease is good through mid 2025. Milburn and Summit will continue to be partners in that joint dispatch. We are still courting Springfield to be a part of that dispatch center, and expect to have an answer on December 12th. I know that the Mountain Valley Emergency Communication Center is meeting on December 18th. And again, we've been working through the budget to make sure that, you know, that both the city of Summit and the township of Milburn are not financially impacted by the changes that are occurring there. But dispatch will continue to live at Mountain Valley.
Mr. Mariziti, would you like to answer anything?
I don't think I need to. No.
Okay, Ms. Prupus?
Thank you. So former Mayor Eglo, I just want to address a few issues about the paper mill. The paper mill is still paying rent. They're not asking not to pay rent. They used to pay and it used to go into the reserve. And then 2 years ago, that stopped. and it went into the general budget. So there's no more reserve. It comes into our operational budget. So they are paying rent. And then Alex, do you sit on the board? Yes?
I do, correct.
Okay, so
I'm on the board of trustees for the paper
okay, and have been,
since I took over as administrator.
but did the former administrator also sit?
Yes.
Okay, so there is some form of communication between Milburn Township and the paper mill. There's not a complete void there. But not to your point as perhaps maybe another board seat of an elected official that operates in a different capacity than Alex does. It is something that perhaps could be considered or discussed.
Just to speak to that, I believe that the paper mill recently passed that that the current city mayor of the township would be, I guess, an emeritus type spot, would be a non-voting member.
But they would be allowed to come to meetings.
Correct.
Do you mean ex
And then-
officio?
Ex officio.
Because that's what the Arboretum does now, that's why.
Correct. Thank you.
Right, so that will be in 2024.
Correct.
Right,
Does
so
a report on what happens, how often are their board meetings?
Their board meetings are basically, full board meetings are once a quarter, but just like in the township committee, they have several subcommittees. I sit on the finance subcommittee and the facilities committee, so. And the audit committee.
and then I'm just gonna reiterate what was said about a larger plan, a larger kind of capital improvement plan for the next couple of years potentially. Just so everyone can see, what monies need to be spent, how, when, so we're not just, fielding requests as they come in, but have a larger plan. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Purpose. Mr. Khan?
Yeah, two things. First of all, I would agree with Mr. Bambara. I think an ordinance that requires excavation, full stop whenever contaminated site undergoes development, I think that's a good idea. We know that that's the sense of the community for this one. It wouldn't be any different anywhere else. And it would save us the aggravation of having to go through that. Of course, the judge was not impressed with that and thought that it was another delaying tactic, but perhaps if we had an ordinance, that would have just made that stronger.
Is that, an ordinance like that, is that legal? Is that something that's even possible or plausible?
To me, it's no different than saying roof decks, right?
I'm just asking, I'm just asking, because the way the judge talked about the cap being enough and never hurting anyone do anything like this, I was just wondering.
I mean, I think first and foremost, obviously, you'd consult with your planner and your attorney on any type of ordinance, but the committee would have to weigh sort of the pros and cons of that type of full remediation from a private developer, as well as what that would mean going forward for any future development, and what the definition by this community standard is contamination.
Well, we can take some examples from the current contract that we are looking at for this site and at least start for multifamily homes.
That's right. I was just gonna say, it should not apply to single family homes with someone getting rid of an oil tank. We can't force them to excavate their whole property. That's obviously not the intention. I'm sure that wasn't your intention either.
But you can't sell your property without that.
But you can remediate it without doing full excavation. But we can certainly, I think it's something worth exploring to make our case stronger. We can review whether it is not inconsistent with the master plan. See, I learned how to say that correctly.
Other people looking on this should be, what do you think, Ms. Purpose?
Yeah, it will also need to be applied to any township property as well.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Sure.
What do you
I
think,
think it's worth looking into, sure.
Mr. McDonald? I think we have a quorum. I'm looking into this. Thank you.
And then the only other thing to Mr. Kirsch's comment about, I know 20 is better than 15. 20 is kind of a ceiling. That's judged to be the amount of affordable housing that would still make a private development profitable. I think it would be, since that's what the developer has to do to get them to do 25 or 30 or 50% would make it, they would say it makes the project not economically feasible. So I
Or they'll
think
make it
20 is-
bigger, yeah.
I think 20% is kind of where that's the agreement at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
I'm wondering with the, sorry,
No, it's okay.
I'm wondering with that set aside, if the 20 can just be the minimum, so that it's not set. It's not preventing us from negotiating with developers for a larger percentage to be applied towards affordable housing.
Yeah, I don't think it says maximum 20%. It says 20% set aside. We can talk and negotiate even more if that is a negotiation bargain we're in.
Just verify the language in that so that it will, because that might not be true for every single, I mean, and if someone's coming to us not in a lawsuit, they might be willing to build more to kind of get the township's blessing and to work with the township. They might be open to building more than 20%. That would want to be I mean, we would want to encourage that.
I was gonna say, the negotiation process in development of land is really confined to the redevelopment process. Otherwise, if it's a project that meets the zoning ordinance, you don't have the legal opportunity to negotiate. Sometimes you can be persuasive, but in redevelopment, and that's the power of redevelopment, there is an opportunity to negotiate all the terms and seek a higher percentage of affordable housing. We're involved in such things in other communities.
But don't we have a rule that any new development, any new commercial development has to have 20% affordable?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, that's by ordinance, that's not a negotiable thing to get it higher. But sometimes you can suggest that would be nice if you did more, but you cannot legally get into a negotiation about land use unless it's in a limited process.
If they're within the zoning compliance, I guess they will have to still do 20%.
Well, they could do more, but as been said,
Minimum.
20% is the minimum. They can certainly go more than that, but what I'm saying is a highly technical point I'm making, that you can't really horse trade unless you're in a redevelopment environment.
That 20%, that is the current ordinance, that's a state statute?
I think, I think that the set-asides, and I'm looking at Graham,
He's saying yes.
are, they're
stipulated in the settlement agreement.
the settlement agreements, and I think in the old days of COA, they established that as the baseline, as the number that would, as has been said, make it financially feasible. That's at least what the developers say. Can't be more than that to make it financially successful.
Good, Ms. Rupes?
Yes.
Mr. Mal?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, so I'll take over a few questions. First of all, I'll start from Paper Mill Playhouse. $7.5 million ask. If I just heard correctly, $350,000 or $330,000 one salary, $326,000 another salary. They pay $100,000 for the full year rent to us. Up to 2 years ago, it was all going into the fund balance, or they were accruing into their salary. Is it 100,000? What is the rent?
It's approximately 175, and it is no longer, like, it was going into a reserve, not into our fund balance.
Right, so it was going into reserve, and we still have some reserve for them. 2 years ago, when we took over into the general fund, we did not move the remaining money from the reserve into others. So they are eyeing that $1.2 million that is in that reserve to be paid to them.
I mean, this could be updated.
Right? So, so when we talk about our infrastructure, and we did very diligently, we paid back our parking deck. When we were in COVID days, we got money from the state. That $2 million, we paid it towards the parking deck because we lost revenue from there. We did not use it elsewhere. We were very focused on getting rid of our debt. It was starting at 6 million, it is now at 0 on that parking deck. But just to kind of name some projects or the money that we are paying extra, we have a $67 million budget to operate our township. It's one of the high-end budget that we spend. Yes, it's an affluent town. We provide a lot of services, but there are towns like town of North Brunswick, town of South Brunswick, 60,000 people, 45,000 people, 60,000 people, they have $65 million budget to operate. There can be some services that do not operate. So we actually operate our town at a very high end, providing the services. So Paper Mill Playhouse asking for 7.5 million. We're going to spend, we thought 3 to $5 million on the 9 Main Street from our portion. Now, because we are going to do the excavation versus the capping, it is going to be between $5 and $7 million, or at least that was the calculation based on the original financial plan. Then approximately $2 million or $1.5 to $2 million increase in the pension and the benefit from our township officials, township officers that worked with us last year that we had to pay above and beyond. 1 million increase was in garbage and recycle services increased, not just the cost. $2.2 million we are buying the building. And then $400,000 approximately, we added 2 more police officers. We had 58 police officers, 6 supporting staff. Now we have 60 police officers, at least the approval for 60 police officers. So altogether, it's about $18 to $20 million. I haven't even accounted for what is going to cost us for this building to renovate. I'm not saying do not spend it. I'm saying this is all coming from one pool. That is the tax money that we collect. We are going to spend $18 to $20 million without even having another plan out there just on these projects or just on these services that we have. We need to be mindful. We need to be really understanding of what we spend, because as I said, it comes from the same pool. We are going to keep increasing the taxes, which we say we are below 2% tax rate, but as an operating cost dollar-wise, we are probably one of the highest. If I go through between 20 or 15,000 population to 25,000 population, our town is about 22,000 population. We are number 1 on the spend. So as much services as we are providing, it costs money. And in the infrastructure, we need to spend money. But our biggest cost is salary, benefit, pension plan. We need to be very cognizant when we add more people on our payroll. We really need to be looking into whether we need that. And I'm not saying lay off people, do not. When they retire, do we really need to add another position in replacement of that? We have over 200 employees overall together, DPW, fire. Our Livingston is in their 50s, I think 52 or 54 spent. Their fire department is volunteer. Our fire department is not volunteer. There are shared services that state has actually provided. I was talking to another representative from a different town. They said, oh, you're already sharing services. Your police department for Short Hills and Melbourne are shared. And I actually laughed at it, and it has kind of made me think, yes, he's right. So if Melbourne and Short Hills had different police department, they would be fighting that they don't want to put it together as one police department. This is how we are here. So when we think about these things, we cannot say Summit Fire Department is not as good as our police department. They're excellent. Our police department is excellent too. In no way I'm trying to demean our people at all. But we as a township spend a lot of money on our operating budget. We need to be mindful of that. So thinking about Paper Mill Playhouse, and I know people don't want to have SID budget, we are going to spend $55,000 to help SID from our township budget. And I know there are people who do not want that. Yes, they have their way of thinking, and I'm not saying that is wrong way of thinking, but $55,000 is what we're talking about, and we keep fighting for it. that we don't want to give it to Sid. Opposed to that, 7.5 million, we're okay to pay to Paper Mill Playhouse because they're going to bring business in town. Well, Sid is doing the same thing. $55,000 we are mindful of. We add 2 more police officers for our public safety. We don't want to add $55,000 for our infrastructure on the business side. So you got to think it through and really make a case. Is this the right thing we're fighting for? And I'm not saying anybody's wrong here. It's different perceptions. I just keep thinking about this. Whenever I'm in doubt, I just think about my next generation. Are they going to be better off this way, or let it be? So I vote when in doubt. I vote if my next generation will get benefit of it. So that's that. The next one is, we talked about gun shop prohibition and we talked about vaping shop. I was in the business of marijuana. And when I realized the business of marijuana, I realized it was not for me. And I got out of it. And that's how I got into Township Committee, because they were trying to get marijuana business in town. And I actually opposed it, came into town. They were talking about taxes, how much taxes we were going to collect. Whereas Governor Murphy had said, medical marijuana, he's going to put taxes to 0 in a couple of years. And it was only medical marijuana at that time approved. So marijuana, since that is substance 1 at federal level, state has approved it. So since it's federally not approved, state has approved it, township has a say whether they want to do it in their town or not. I'm not sure about vaping CBD out of hemp, because hemp is allowed by federal government and marijuana is not. So like cigarette, you cannot stop. I would actually ask our legal advisor or legal counsel to look into it and come back to us and tell us whether we can stop vaping product or CBD product, because the CBD is not coming from marijuana, they're coming from hemp. And hemp is allowed in a new rule that was allowed, I think, a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. And gun, same way. I believe it is allowed from federal, so township may not have a say, but if township has a say, I'm all for it to actually make sure we have an ordinance of going through zoning board at least, if not completely ban gun shops here. It's against the second. I'm sorry?
It's against the second.
Okay. On the flood mitigation, there is also one more point they are looking at, is the reservoir, that if they can have, again, it's a lot of projects that they're talking about, whether that gets approved or moved forward or not, I'm not sure. But they are looking at an area where they can have underground reservoir where they can actually collect water and not to have flooding in the area.
Deputy Mayor.
Sure.
Can I interrupt one piece when we're talking about
Sure.
money to be spent? That bypass, if Orange says we can do it, and if that money is to mostly be spent by Milburn, because we would have such a huge benefit. I mean, I've heard, $5 million.
It's about $5 million
So
project, yes.
that's another project that we need to consider possibly doing.
And while we say this, when I came in 3 years ago, we had a fund balance of about $16 million. It went up to about $21 million. We started taking out some money from it to make sure we have 0% tax increase, starting using money from that fund balance into a regular budget. And fund balance is now close to about $19 million. And our CFO could.
Prior to our usage of current.
Right. So, and we made sure every year when we went starting the year, it was never below what we started 3 years ago. That was about $16-17 million. So we made sure the fund balance is equal or more, while using the excess money to operate without raising taxes. Again, there was a lot of thought process behind it. I know this doesn't come out to public very often, but I think we really need to keep thinking about how we spend, where we spend. Infrastructure spending is very important, and that's where the fund balance money could be used. And again, I'm not saying that Paper Mill Playhouse is the wrong project. No, it could be the right project, but think about it. It's one pool. Where do you want to spend? Okay. And last but not the least, Mr. Feld has said he has asked questions a few times, not been answered. The questions had been answered. His question will come up again. There are a lot of questions that he asked. Some I don't have the answers on, but some that get responded back here. But it will still come in the email to the question list of the question he will send after that. And I've seen that where I've answered that question and the question has still come in. But there are a lot of questions he asked, and he's a passionate resident. So I guess I will let the public officer internally answer their questions. That's all I have. Thank you. The township will now consider consent agenda resolution. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve resolution 23-272 through resolution 23-274,
So.
which are listed on the consent agenda?
So.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Ms. Prupus.
Yes.
Ms. Romano.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Benoit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Getting into old business, we have paper mill playhouse funding requests. Mr. McDonald, do you have a update to provide?
Just a very brief update. Again, just wanted to continue to keep this request in the public eye and alert the public that the paper mill is going to be hosting a public information session at the Paper Mill Playhouse on Monday, December 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. They will also have a Zoom option. We will actually be putting this out tomorrow via our Rave Mobile or Millburn Alert. And just to make sure that the public is aware, everyone in Millburn Short Hills, Millburn Township are invited. This is a conversation with all of you to present their ask. Again, that ask was $7.5 million. It was included $1.2 million of the reserve that had been set up, which reduces what the township would end up bonding for that. Again, the elements of that ask are the moving of the historical facade, some infrastructure projects and safety projects on the actual premise, which includes the parking lot retaining wall, the flood wall. It also includes the purchase of the property at 20 Brookside Drive. Again, they'll explain this at that public information session, but for those that are interested, they can RSVP. That information will be put in the notice to the public as well.
Where is it being held?
At the
Paper Mill.
yes.
So we focus understandably so on the $7.5 million, but I hope that we also will have the opportunity to focus on some of the comments that Mr. Stotts made, particularly about their request to no longer pay rent. So that kind of caught me by surprise when he said that. And, I think that's just something we should discuss. That's, with the $7.5 million isn't going to change whether they pay rent or not, but that's something I think we need to agree on.
I think we should agree on even making them pay even higher rent if we spend 7.5 million in the building.
Well,
So again, my thought process is a little different. I am completely in opposition on paying any dime to Paper Mill Playhouse. If we have to fix certain things to get it up to the legal level, we should, but not to spend 7.5 million public money on the Paper Mill Playhouse just because they have $40 million project going on for their benefit.
Well, and again, I'm not here to debate on behalf of Paper Mill, but I would just also like to point out that it is our property and that it is an investment in our own property as well. That the requests by Mr. Stotts, I think the township committee should view those as simply that.
Requests.
Yeah,
That's fine.
and that,
That's
and
fine.
that it is not something that I think that they are necessarily beholden to. It's just and it might also be a different avenue of approach when it comes to funding. It could, you know, you can look at it a few different ways. But again, just encouraging the committee and the township and the residents to go out December 18th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the Paper Mill Playhouse for that public information session.
How long is their lease?
And we,
A
it's
long time.
$100, 100 years lease, 100-year lease, I think, I believe.
No, it is initially a 35-year lease, and then I believe there are 4 10-year options.
75 years.
But they bring $20+ million of economic benefit to our community per year. Somebody has to look at the economics, please.
You will.
I have a question.
I will, right.
But that's all fine, but you know, with something like whether they continue to pay rent or not is to me.
No, I'm sure it
negotiable.
is in good hands. Township is in good hands. Brian and Frank will be here. Whatever call they make, some people may think that's a wrong call. Some people will think that's a right call. It's on their shoulder and your shoulders. You can make that call. It's fine.
I have a question. That retaining wall,
Yes.
is that more of a township issue than a paper mill issue? Like with flooding?
It is, I mean, it is, yes. I mean, it's sort of both, right? They have a concern on a particular piece of the flood wall there. And you know, they're looking to address it holistically as they go through this project, because they're gonna be doing a bunch of work. And it is probably much easier to facilitate as a total project and then just individually breaking up all these little projects.
December 18th.
And maybe just get a little piece.
Okay, any other comment on
Nope.
on this? Moving on to new business, redevelopment agreement, 9 Main Street. Mr. Marazini, you want to talk where we
Yes,
are, the status on that and update on that and where we are
Will.
with that?
So hearing the admonition of the judge on the 27th and having heard it before, it's been my assignment to do everything possible to negotiate the terms of a redevelopment agreement with RPM to provide for 75-unit, 100% affordable housing project. I have had no other instruction other than to do that, and that's what I have focused on doing. And we have negotiated almost every single term of that agreement. There are 2 provisions that remain unresolved. One of them has to do with the amount of umbrella insurance during the due diligence period. The township has taken the position that it should be 15 million. RPM has countered and held firm at 10. The other open issue is with respect to a credit to the township for the avoided cost that will be a benefit to RPM because of the enhanced remediation. They will not need to put in the normal cap and deed controls and engineering controls. So there's a certain amount of savings there. And it's not clear how much that savings will be yet because those details have not yet been really designed for this project. The construction drawings and all of that are yet to be done. So we got into a discussion about a credit to the township, which concept is agreed to. And RPM came back with a request that it be no greater than $15,000.
Wasn't this discussed? It was going to be $200,000 to $600,000 capping when we met here last time.
I don't recall that.
The gentleman who actually came here, who did the presentation on excavation versus.
Yes, I spoke with him on this topic. So I'll just give you the scenario. RPM started with 15 million, they went up to 30. We said 30,000, yes, and we countered, and they came up actually to 75. But Mr. Drucker, the gentleman you just referred to, I spoke with him. he did a calculation and thought it could be as much as 175. So there's a gap there. That issue is unresolved. All the other issues have been negotiated with great effort by many people over a long period of time. And that agreement, which I forwarded on Friday, I think it was
The 100
circulated.
pages agreement.
The agreement is 100 pages and it's got exhibits that total about 100 pages, which include the copy of the settlement agreement, a copy of the redevelopment plan, a truck mitigation plan in terms of how the soils will go out, what roads the soils will go out of, and the clean soils will come back in at. We negotiated the provisions regarding the enhanced remediation. There was a back and forth about that. The initial proposal was that the site be excavated to bedrock. They came back and said they looked at that and looked at the site and estimated that it could cost approximately $10 million if that were to be the case. Why? Because some areas of the site, the depth is to 30 feet. Some areas of the site, the depth to bedrock is not known yet. And so the other aspect of that was going that deep, especially near the railroad tracks and the JCP&L easement, they worried would threaten the structure of those, the stability of both of those if they were to go that deep. So we went back to Paul Drucker, the gentleman that you referred to, the township's LSRP, and LSRP is in effect an agent of DEP. And he countered with some language that was acceptable, which was that instead of going 30 feet, the excavation would be to native soils, or beyond native soils if native soils are contaminated, or to weathered bedrock, whichever is more shallow. That changed the dynamic. It changed the worry about the question of the stability of the railroad. RPM had mentioned to us that they actually had a problem with the platform at the railroad station in Orange being affected by their project there because they had to go deeper for a different reason. So that was resolved, and that issue was one of the bigger issues to be resolved, and we were able to get that resolved. The financial plan that RPM submitted just very recently, I think it was November 20th, was analyzed by Acacia, their new financial consultants. There are details of that are yet to be worked out in terms of the financial agreement that the judge has provided must be adopted on February 15th. So there are some aspects of this that naturally go into the financial agreement. But other than those two open topics, the negotiations have been resolved.
Mr. Maraziti, how do we separate the financial and the contract agreement? If we sign the contract and the financials do not come in line with what we have already seen, Township was on a hook for $3 to $5 million of this project. And now with this excavation, it was more like $5 to $7 million because of the $2 million extra on the excavation. Are we sure that that is what we are going to be on the hook on, or is
those numbers were never more than estimates. They were never hard and fast numbers.
Okay, so I can agree maybe $100,000 here or there, but
the essence of your question is, pardon me?
Pick another spot to put the building.
I'm sorry.
Guys, can you please be quiet? Let him speak.
Yeah, so your question is, if you sign this and the financial provisions are not yet resolved, what happens? This agreement anticipates that there is to be another agreement. So this document is conditioned upon the adoption of the financial agreement in February. So they're not inconsistent, that there are issues yet to be resolved. And it is typical in redevelopment for the financial agreement, the pilot agreement to follow the adoption and execution of the redevelopment agreement. That's not unusual.
No, but I don't feel comfortable working with.
That's fine.
I mean, I know the statement was made earlier on the blank check signing. I want to get some idea what numbers we talked about in the past. They are estimated, but by a specialist, it was an estimated cost. If the project is about
We're
$50
in the
million
dark
project.
again.
The project is about $50 million project. You don't want it to go south because now I just spoke about what all we need to spend on. And in that I have put on this amount as well. I don't feel comfortable signing something like this without knowing their exact cost. And you started with insurance of $25 million. They are coming up to 15. Well, how do we know 15 is enough if we don't have another company in the mix, right?
Well,
What are the other township doing in this case? If there is a site like ours?
well, you're in an unusual situation. I can't say that I know of another township that's in exactly the situation, but I have to stress that the numbers have always been estimates, even the numbers given by Paul Drucker about the cost of remediation. It was always a range. There's a lot of uncertainties about that. They will never be finally known until construction drawings are not done. The contracts are not bid for the excavation and the trucking, and then the trucking in of the clean fill, the location of disposal facilities. Those are all uncertainties as to what they will be. So
Yeah, but-
this is the nature of this piece.
And no disrespect to you, I'm saying $2 million that we talked about on the excavation, they came back with $10 million price tag on it, which to me is like, it's not within even the range. So
No.
now they've gone back and said, we have put in a condition that we can go to shallow level of certain thing, and now we are back to, I hope it's 2 million. I'm not sure what that is, but I feel very uncomfortable even talking about this. Signing is far off. But if they are within the ballpark, I'm okay. Maybe you have any question, Mr. Purpose or Mr. Cohen, Mr. Romano? I don't want to be the only person asking the question.
I was just ready, first of all, as long as there are any open issues, we're not in a position to approve it. So you mentioned 2 open issues and they are open. Assuming that they get resolved, then we need time to review it. It's a 200-page document, including the exhibits. That's not, I mean, I've read an early draft of it over several days because there's just so much you could do at one time. But nonetheless, we also would need time to review it. And I'm sure that if there are 200 pages, we will have questions. Some of us will. Beyond that, it also needs to go out on the website for the public to review it, and they certainly will have questions as well because they haven't been involved with it all along to the extent that we have. So there's plenty of stuff yet to happen. I also don't understand how, I know you said this is customary, but I have to agree with Mr. Benayak that I don't understand how we can approve an agreement where the costs are in draft. I think those numbers need to be locked down. I mean, they can be estimates, but we need some kind of confidence interval around how wide the estimate is. Is it within 10%? If it's within 200%, then that's a poor estimate, and we don't have that sense. We have not been given any of that comfort. So to me, those are all things that need to happen before this could even come to a resolution for the township committee to approve.
Ms. Purpose, you have anything?
I'm just thinking about the credits and the 4% versus the 9% path. So in this document, it's where it's claimed which path we're gonna go down. Is That's a
Yeah,
question. Yeah.
yes, the contract requires that the application for the low-income housing tax credits be with the 4% program. The 4% program is one that does not have a schedule, a revolving schedule. The 9% program does. So that's only open at intervals of time. And the township has taken the position that we want the RPM to go for the 4% rather than the 9%. And the contract provides, it happens to be on page 41, that that if they're unsuccessful in obtaining an award of 4% low-income housing tax credits and affordable housing production fund tax credits, after a demonstration that the redeveloper has in good faith diligently pursued and exhausted all avenues to acquire at 4%, a 4% award, upon presentation to the township of documentation of formal and final written rejection and or demonstration of ineligibility, redeveloper may only then submit an application for award of competitive 9% tax credit.
I know that we've never had that, we've always, since we've started this conversation, said that we want to do a 4%, at least this committee.
Yes.
So that is still up in question.
The settlement agreement provided for 9%. And we have taken the position in these negotiations that they must start at 4%. And only upon demonstrated failure may they go to 9%. And so they've agreed to that.
I think we need to take a stronger position in there that we're only gonna do it at 4%.
If we took that position, then we would be in violation of the settlement agreement that was adopted, as you know, some time ago. So we pushed as hard as we could, and we got this provision that requires documentation and after diligent pursuit.
Mr. Marazzuti, you just mentioned, and I don't mean to take the question away from you. He just looked at me saying, as signed in the agreement, that goes to you, me, and Ms. Miggins for now, and the two other. I do not want to be in that seat again, where we are pushed that our deadline is meeting and you need to sign it. I'm not going to do that unless public has the vision and seeing the final report or final contract before they look at it. Again, it's not that I'm trying to shy away from the project. I'm all for it because we signed an agreement, but we need to make sure public knows exactly what is in the contract and what we are paying, and we need to give them due time. And I don't want to be on the verge again, kind of at a gunpoint, sign it now.
I think we've all learned that.
So I'm not
So I
doing
think-
that.
I want to make it clear, I'm taking notes so that I can report to the court. I'm not telling you have to sign it.
Yep.
The judges, not me.
But we need to have time,
Yes.
there's just not enough time, like, we need to have time to have an information set. First, we need to get the
This
agreement
final
and a final
contract,
form.
yes.
Then we need to have a time for the public to review it and to comment on it. And then we need to go back and forth with the public, take into their comments into consideration. And then maybe at that point, then they'll be ready to sign it.
Well, then we have to go back to RPM because they may not, that could cause changes.
Could cause
that they may
changes.
not- May or may not.
So then that negotiation has to happen.
That's right.
But at least once that negotiation happens and the contract gets signed, it is foolproof that it is signed with every party involved.
Right,
enough
no, I'm just laying
with
out the
full
process,
information,
yeah, I'm
yes.
just laying out the process, so. While the court order, did you wanna say something?
And I mean,
Oh.
I agree with everything that's been said. I haven't had the opportunity to go through the entire document. And while Mr. Marazzuti said that there are 2 issues, I feel that I know myself are going to have additional questions, before we can actually come to an agreement and sign it. So I'm not comfortable signing it, especially in a draft form.
Well, it's still new business and we were supposed to
Right, so-
discuss and we gave our inputs. Mr. Marazzuti, any more questions for us? I think you see what people are talking, what.
Yes, the judge has asked me to report
Absolutely.
tonight, so I will send a letter and report. That's my function.
I think as a community, we learn that we can't be pushed into these deadlines without having the public involved.
Yes.
And I know it's supposed to roll out this way, but to talk about this without talking about the finances first is, I can't understand.
Unless they were really solid estimates with a
Yes.
range,
Agreed.
you know, and we could take a worst case scenario, something like that, but that's not what this is.
And if that's the case, that we could possibly end up in 4%, you know, in 9%, then that needs to be kind of laid out
What that
as
means.
well.
Any other questions or? Mr. McDonald, do you have anything? You good?
I'm good. Copy the township committee on my list.
Thank you. We have one more business, historic preservation regulation. Ms. Prupus, you requested that to be up here.
Yeah, we have Graham here with us tonight. I think through everything that we went through as a town around the historic designations or the potential historic designations and the Historic Preservation Commission and how they kind of followed the letter of the law and they followed the procedures that were laid out for them. We saw that something kind of went amiss and we just want to figure out how we can address that. So we invited Graham here tonight to discuss different options and different, how it's done in different towns to start a conversation on the procedure of the HPC.
Okay, Mr. Graham.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of the Township Committee. Graham Petto, Principal of Topology, here serving as Township Planner. Thank you, Ms. Prupus, for inviting me along this evening to talk with you all. Before I get too far into my remarks, I did just want to provide an update. I spoke with Mr. McDonald earlier today. The designation process that was started by the Historic Preservation Commission earlier this year in the fall, obviously did not conclude and did not proceed to a public hearing process and the process stopped. Property owners did receive notice that the process was beginning, that there would be some restrictions during the pendency of the nomination process on their properties. I spoke with Mr. McDonald and I advised that a notice should be sent out to those property owners that this process has stopped and that they are free to do what they wish under existing regulations. So that notice is forthcoming. So I just wanted to put that out on the record. So we're not talking more designations here. We are clearing the deck a little bit, to say the least. My experience is a little bit unique as a planner. I previously worked for a municipality where I served as a municipal employee and was support staff to a Historic Preservation Commission. During my time on this, serving as support staff to the Historic Preservation Commission, I helped steward through 5 designations for historic properties. 2 were successful, 3 were not. So kind of a mixed bag. But the ordinance there, in my review of the ordinance that I was, administering in this community, and compared to the ordinance that's here, currently adopted and codified in Milburn, there's a couple of deficiencies and discrepancies that I think we need to evaluate and provide some opportunity for, alignment to ensure that the process respects public participation in a greater manner, allows for comments in support and in opposition to be registered with the commission, and also to avail opportunities for designation by not just land use boards or to the township committee, but also by property owners themselves. If a property owner is a willing participant and wants to go through and designate their property, they should have that opportunity. And the ordinance presently in Milburn does not do that. So I think, there's a couple of different approaches that can be identified and discussed. I'm happy to talk through some of those in detail if you'd like, but I think probably the best avenue for us is perhaps a subcommittee of township committee members to sit down and kind of review the existing ordinance. And also have the opportunity to engage with the HPC's counsel as well, so that the attorney for the HPC can advise on the process as well. So happy to answer any high-level questions that you may have about the process, or improvements that I'd recommend. But I don't want to get too into the weeds on that stuff and perhaps keep it at a higher
Do you
level.
see that as a subcommittee of the township committee or the HPC or participation from both? Because we don't, I mean, I don't think any of the
Right.
people coming in, included, have that level of expertise. So I would assume, I would hope that I would agree it could be both, but I don't think it should just be, I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it can be beneficial to the process to have, obviously representation from the township committee, because, you all will be the ones taking action to implement modifications to the ordinance.
Had public also in that subcommittee, so HPC, public and PC.
Yeah, I mean, the township committees, can, put together whomever they'd like. But I do think to respond to your question, Mr. Cohen, I think that, a member of the HPC may be helpful in this process, and probably also a member of the planning board, I think would be helpful as well. As, they're the ones that have adopted the historic preservation plan element and can kind of convey some of that consistency, of these processes. But on the whole, I think that, it is important to refine the process. Historic preservation is important. And I think that we should be, making sure that we respect both homeowners' integrity in the process and their participation, as well as what the HPC's intent is to protect the character of the town.
We would also, I would think, need legal advice from someone with that specific expertise, which is, a specialty.
Yes,
So-
and that was my allusion to the HPC attorney, the council. The HPC attorney, I think, would be a beneficial participant.
I'm sorry, you said HBC attorney, planning board.
A planning board member.
HPC member.
Perhaps.
HPC member,
And
planning board member, HPC attorney, TC member, and the member of the public. That is what I heard.
Right.
So if you want to set a subcommittee up, Mr. McDonald.
I wanna point something out and perhaps agree with all of that, but also I think there is a degree of efficiency that's gonna be needed here, as well as a degree of, identifying what the issues or deficiencies in the ordinance are currently, because, I don't know that anybody envisioned this to be a complete rewrite of the historic preservation code, but more addressing what we feel were inadequacies in the process that we experienced this fall. In particular, how the township committee's role is in not only the public, which Graham brought up, but also the township committee's role in that process, because in the ordinance it states that once if those properties are designated, that it comes to the township committee and they shall provide that to the planning board. And in the end, when we've gone through zoning code, what has happened is the township committee starts that process. They start that process by introducing an ordinance. So that shows that the township committee has a penchant to support that particular legislation. And in this process, that nothing like that happens prior to all of that happening at the HPC level. And I think that, that's kind of one of the key
Crucial
junctures
step.
in this process.
Correct.
So I just, again, obviously I'm here at your direction, but
In
I'm.
simple
but isn't
words
that-
and one sentence, what do you
But
recommend?
isn't that a question of expertise? Because, somebody needs to start the idea and say, this is something that could qualify as historic. And I don't think the five of us necessarily, including the two new people, would be able to say, sure, yes, it is, no, it isn't. Whereas starting at the Historic Preservation Committee, those people do have
How
that.
about
I-
before the
I
notice
think-
goes out?
Yeah, I'm not making
How about
any sort of
before the notice
overture
goes out?
that
but you
it
were
shouldn't
saying it
start
should
at,
start-
no,
I
I
thought
just
you
said
said
that's
it
how
should start.
zoning starts, and at least there is a point at which the township committee, provides their support in it. You don't even get that until everybody's been noticed,
Right.
everybody's
that's
already
fine.
at your
Right.
doorstep,
That's fine.
all those things happen.
Right.
And
But even the zoning ordinances come from, they don't start at the township committee, they come from,
But
They
they're
could,
taking
you
one-
could just decide that you wanna prohibit,
but the ones that we just did,
Gun
didn't-
shops, vaping shops.
yeah, but the ones that we just did where it came
frequently
from-
they've started from the zoning code examination.
It did, yeah, where you simplified the rules with the number of stories and height and all that setback. That didn't start here. It came here after with,
But there wasn't a zoning code examination before 2021. That was a new
So it is
committee.
also possible to use the existing structure that we already have and
Of the
and
zoning code,
run
that
this
makes
through
sense.
the zoning.
That would be, but even the zoning structure, that doesn't, does that look at historic, from a historic?
The historic preservation regulations live within the development regulations and zoning
Sure,
ordinance.
but the
So
zoning committee, is there any historic
Yes,
expertise
there
on
is,
that?
Yes.
there is.
Okay,
So
then
I
that
think
makes
that's a
sense.
good idea.
We have an
There is
existing
already a
group.
planning
Mhm.
board member in there,
yes,
a zoning board member,
Mhm.
planning board member,
Who
I'm
were
not
the
sure
TC
attending it,
members on
but
there?
HPC is there.
Currently,
And you just need to add their attorney if you like,
currently Deputy Mayor Benayak and Mayor Miggins are on that subcommittee.
and you could be two of the members on that committee, subzoning. It's a nice committee where you're talking about
I
real
know, I
strategy.
started the committee.
Kudos to you.
It's
No,
good.
kudos
Yeah,
to
no,
you, so,
It was
yeah.
it was all Alex's idea, so I'm not taking the thing, but I know what the committee is, I was just.
Okay, Alex, kudos to you.
Yeah. It was.
All right, so do we have
I mean, do you got, do you
Bob
wanna?
Pat forward here? What?
It's certainly worth, I mean, given what happened, you certainly should look at it. Of course, I think everybody's thinking one way, you're saying adding to it by letting a homeowner self-subscribe is probably the opposite of what people were thinking, but so certainly there's no harm in looking at anything and making recommendations for making it better, and if that's the committee, obviously they'll need two new members with Mayor
Existing
Miggins
members,
and Mr. Benayak leaving, but that seems to be the place to do that work.
sure.
Okay, so far, the current member of that committee, other than Ms. Miggins and I, will stay in there, and that is representative of HPC,
Mhm.
zoning. I'm not sure if planning board is still attending the meeting, but if there is none, you can add one, or,
Mhm.
right, and then, yeah.
Yeah, at the reorg in January, the committee will
Right.
reconstitute.
Okay.
membership.
And we'll have some new TC members for it
Right.
as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, we'll
Sounds
be
good.
out anyways, two TC members will be in.
Great.
Big opportunity for them. All right,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second?